Thank you. Hello, thank you to be there. First, I want to thank the organization of the festival to invite me and also invited us from all over the world, where you know about a bunch of surf journalists who have been working on surfing for more than 35 years. And we made it together here. It's kind of a nice moment. And it's very important to renew the history, the memory of it. And you Portuguese, you organized that festival, so very thankful for that. And so me, I am Gibus, just to present quickly myself. I am a French surfer. We created a Surf Session magazine about just 2 years before Surf Portugal, you know Surf Portugal. And after I was part of the bunch of people who create Surfrider Foundation for Europe. And so I have been involved in the surfing for many time. And just now, I am running the French version of the American journal, which is the Surfers Journal. So my speech is, it's in two parts. The first part would be about the story of the ancient Polynesian, the migration of the ancient Polynesian, because we all know the story since Captain Cook arrived in Hawaii, but not a lot before. And the second part, it's more anecdotic. It's my discovery of Jardim being the first surfer at Jardim. So let's speak about the Polynesian. So the Polynesian, the story of the Polynesian, it's the story of a human migration. And so the human migration to the Pacific start about 300,000 before Jesus, and up to maybe 2,000 or 3,000, up to 800 after, or 1,200 after. And so it's in fact, we speak about the people, ocean people, and after we speak about Polynesian people. And it starts from, Philippines and Papuasie and all that. And if you look at the map, in fact, you see from west to east up to French Polynesia, Tahiti, in the center of the Pacific. It's an amount of thousands of islands. So, in fact, they were just jumping to one island to another. And it's by that way, it takes quite a long time, they developed their own civilization. And this civilization, it's a maritime, a marine, and a sea civilization. And they developed two things. They developed one thing, which is, we say, a cosmology in French, I don't know what to speaking. And cosmology, it means that there is no rupture in your spiritual relationship to the world and your practical relationship to the world. It's one world. And in fact, they develop a way of thinking that the ocean was the envelope of themselves, okay? So they travel with the stars in the sea, but in fact, they travel in themselves. And if you understand, because, first thing is to understand that Pacific, the surface of the Pacific is 66 million of square kilometers. So, and the island, so the surface of the island is less than one person. So when you go in that ocean, of course, they don't know what was going on. But it's kind of it's an adventure more risky than even now going to the moon. And so at that time, they did not have any idea of the horizon. So they were not going towards the horizons. They were going to the sea in themselves. This is very important to understand how they conquer the Pacific. And so spiritually, in fact, each island is like the navel, and up the island, you have a dome of star. And when you go to one island to another island, you just change of dome, okay? So you go to one dome to another dome. And so they were all the people, the family, the kids, the women, men, and also there were the pilots of the boat. And maybe they were going first, looking if there is an island not far, and coming back and taking all the family on the boat, the animals, the nurture, the food and everything, and going to the island. But how they discovered, how they developed their sailing. In fact, they invented the trimaran, and also catamaran. And can you imagine? They were building those boats with more than 10 species of wood, So it's really a technology. And they didn't have any metal, so they didn't have a hammer or nails. They just have a cord. And how they built the cord is they were taking from the nuts of the coconuts, and in the nuts you have the fiber, and the fiber is that long, and they were making a long cord to construct to build their boat, and so like that the boat were flexible to the swell, and so this and of course. I don't know if you sail with a catamaran, but when you sail with the catamaran, you mainly swell with the wind, with the swell. So, in fact, they were going with the element. So, they were not sailing against the element. Okay. So, this is for the boat. And after, they didn't have any idea of west, north, east. They were just going to the ocean, and they developed a kind of incredible feeling of the ocean and of the movement of the ocean to know where to go. And when you are in the ocean, what do you observe? You observe the sky, of course. At night, you can observe the stars. But if there are clouds, this is a kind of a problem. You observe the cloud, of course, the shape of the cloud. You observed the sea, of course, the swell. Can you imagine? They were putting their ears on the la coque, on the hull of the boat to listen the impact of the waves when they were sailing, and like that, it was for them a kind of a data to sail. And so also they were looking at all the animals. If you are in the middle of the ocean, you can see the albatross. If you are close to an island, there is a small bird like the frigate and all those. Same for the fish and everything. And in fact, they were using all that kind of observation, but they were taking the data of what's going on at the moment. If it was a clear day, it was maybe nice to see, to observe the sea, the swell. If it was cloudy, you would look at the cloud. And of course, they had two technique memo to interpret, to feel the swell and the stars. And the stars, they did not use the stars as something to follow, but just they draw in the sky a kind of a road by this technical memo, which was just you make on the beach and with two stone, a piece of wood, and you understand, the geometric system that you have to have in your mind, and the same for the swell, and. So like that, they went to all the Pacific. And in fact, they arrived in Tahiti. And after, they create this famous Polynesian triangle from Hawaii on the north, New Zealand on the southeast, and Easter Island on the on the east, and New Zealand on the west. And now I am going to explain you, to tell you the story of one of those captains. And you all know Captain Cook, of course, but if I tell you Tupaya, I don't think there is anybody who knows Tupaya besides Sam George, who is an historian, but I don't think you know Tupaya. In fact, Tupaya was a navigator, a Polynesian navigator, on his first travel to Polynesia. Cook met Tupaya, and people of Tahiti were saying, yeah, take that guy, he will guide you to all the island around. They say, okay, okay. And so the guy jumped on the boat with nothing, totally nothing. And he was exactly putting all the boat of Captain Cook to all the island around Tahiti. And after, so the exchange, they were, Captain Cook was a very open-minded guy, kind of he was taking, those trips were to make a cartography, you know, of a mapping all the Pacific. And and also they were all the scientific on the boat, and they were kind of interest about the knowledge of Tupaya. And in fact, Tupaya wanted to sail back with Captain Cook going back to England, because he wanted to discover the civilization of those new men, of those white men. So he stayed on board, and he did the traveling back by sailing south to New Zealand, and from New Zealand along the Australian coast. And finally, he died of typhus in Indonesia at Batavia, which is now the town of Jakarta. And in fact, he has not been any, he did not got any recognition in our history, because when Cook was back in England, you know, Tupaya was dead. But all the people, the scientists, asked at that time Tupaya to, hey, can you put on a piece of paper all the island you know? And so if you understood what I said, and also knowing that's the knowledge of the Polynesian is like all the knowledge of the indigenous culture, it's an oral knowledge. So they don't know how to write. They don't know. So for him to put the island on a piece of paper, it was something he could not do it, and mainly also because if you understand, is that he has to be in the ocean to understand where the island is coming. Because in fact, by their way of traveling, they were not going towards an island, but the island was coming to them. You know, and so how can you put, you know, the island? Finally, he did a map with his own knowledge, and also with the knowledge he got from the ancient navigator. And this map had been collected in the Bibliothèque of London, and now about, let's say 20 years ago, all the anthropologists try to study that map. And they finally could say that this guy, Tupaya, knew where he was in about a third of the Pacific without nothing. Can you imagine? You know, this is incredible, in fact. Huh? You are in the middle of the Pacific, and you know where you were without any instruments, without anything. And now you can't move without your GPS towards the stage. So this civilization had invented that. Yeah, this thing is incredible. And our sport, surfing, is coming from this civilization. So this is important to understand, that how he's in fact, we can say that they develop in their brain such an incredible feeling of the ocean and an incredible knowledge of the ocean, so they could travel like that. Of course, you can imagine that there were a lot of boats was been lost. They just travel, and it happened nothing, and they did not find any island. But, when the first European was going in the Atlantic, I mean, you know the story of Christophe Colomb, they had already covered all the Pacific, Well, so this is a kind of a strange, incredible story, and this, gives us a kind of a good feeling of where we come from as a surfer. And also the story. So, as I told you, Tupaya died in Indonesia, and it's kind of a symbolic because so he did not came back to in his own island and in his own civilization. And what happened to Cook? In Cook, in fact, he did a street travel. On his last travel, it's on his last travel that he discovered surf in Hawaii. In fact, he was in Kauai, and after he stopped in Kauai, but they did not go to shore. So he went to the up north in the Atlantic and came back. And when he came back, it was in the big island of Hawaii. And at that time, the Hawaiian was the period of the Makahiki. And the Makahiki, it's a period for the Hawaiian where they stop working, they stop fighting, and they just honor the god of Lono. And the god Lono is the god of la fertilité. I don't know in English, fertility, anyway. And so you honor, and so you play. You surf, you dance hula, any kind of that. You on the Polynesian were hedonist, huh? So you live your own pleasure. And so imagine, and this period is from September to February. So it is the exact period of the swell. And so when Cook arrived in that bay, it was at the end of January. In fact, all the Polynesians saw those two boats as, the apparition of God Lono, And so when those guys arrived, they were honored by all the people of the island, So there were no fight. And so you can imagine the meeting, the encounter of those white guys, the crew, frustrated about such a long time on boat and having no food, and suddenly those beautiful women coming, having sex with them, and having plenty of food and all that. I mean, this junction is incredible. Can you imagine? And so anyway, it stayed like that for 15 days. And after, there were kind of it was the end of the Makahiki, not much food. But anyway, Cook decided to leave because he has to continue his traveling. And in fact, he got an injury with his boat, and he came back. And this was the destruction of the myth, because, God Lono could not come twice. It's impossible. So it destroyed the legend, the myth. And at the same time, the people were a little bit nervous because it was the end of the Makahiki. The white people of the crew of Captain Cook had a little bit abused of the generosity of the indigenous. So a fight happened, and during that fight, Cook has been killed. Yeah? And in fact, at the same as Tupaya never went back to his own territory, Cook never went back to his own territory. And those two pilots has an incredible encounter of knowledge, you know. And so this also, it's quite interesting to understand that also our civilization, this is the message of it, our civilization has developed in about 300 or 350 years since Cook, our civilization, our modern world, about numbers, how we calculate, how we map, and everything. And we continue with satellite and everything. And at the same time, you had a civilization who was on those islands for 1,000 years, and they just have a good relationship with the environment, and they last. It's not to say that our knowledge is less important than them anyway, but just have, you know, a comparison, and this put us in a kind of to be humble, to be humble. So I don't know how much time I have still to talk. It's okay. And so I want to just also to speak a little bit about how the Hawaiian invented the surf. If you consider the element in the nature, man would, take all the element, control the element with just to extend his territory or to get food to the community. You put a sail on a boat and you travel faster and you go fishing. You ride horse, you extend your territory, and you can go for hunting. And also, if you are in the mountains, you walk in the snow, and you try to make a piece of wood with a spatule, I don't know, like a spoon, you know, in front. And so you glide in the snow, and so you go faster and you extend your territory. And after, you have the feeling of the pleasure of gliding. But with a wave, when you take a wave, you don't bring any fish to the community. And you stand up on your board. You are on the board, maybe 15 or 10 seconds, and you fall, and you might die, and you might sink in the water. And so it's unuseful. And so to invent that sport, and also if you consider the world at this period of indigenous culture. The Aborigine has been in Australia for more than 50 years, 50,000 years, I mean. And you have waves all around Australia. They didn't invent surfing. You know. Their story was with the dream, the stars. Enfin, this is another knowledge. If you think about the Indian, they were living, the Chumash were just close to Malibu. They did not invent the surf. They could, but they didn't. Of course, there is story of fishermen in Peru, coming back and being. But in fact, the real story of surfing belongs to the Polynesian and belongs to Hawaii. And so this is because they arrive because of course of this knowledge of the ocean. And also, you have to have that kind of. They were hedonist, so they have the feeling of joy. They were very open-minded with the sex. They were with the love, and they were very. They had this relationship of joy with the nature, and so. To have the feeling of the joy of gliding, maybe 10 seconds on a wave, stand up on the board, it belongs to that civilization because they have that. And so we can imagine, they were how they invented the surf. First, they were gliding with their outrigger, in the channel with the wave on the both sides of the reef. And there is description of Cook speaking about the joy of the guy, with his paddling with the swell, very happy, and saying, yeah, it's like gliding on the ice in our country. And after, maybe there was one of those guys who just stand up on the outrigger, try, and after they invented the piece of wood. Of course, you have everywhere in the world. You have the pleasure of gliding, lying on a board and just like doing bodyboarding. But to invent, let's try to stand up. You don't see any animals doing that, huh? So you have to develop that pleasure, and you have to be conscious of the pleasure of it. So this is kind of because in Hawaii, but now you know the story of the alaya, the olo for the chief, and how it was part of the community. Also quite important at that period, the women were surfing as much as men. Huh? It was a totally equality in the water. But what happened after Cook? In fact, it was, as I said, it was the end of the myth because of Lono. Huh? Lono can't come back twice, so the legend it fell out. And fell down, and after, of course, after Cook, it was the beginning of the colonization. So all the white people coming without having any relationships towards the elements. So they were cutting trees, fishing wells, and everything, and it was the start of the destruction. So maybe, yeah. So this is for the part of the Polynesian, and I want you to just I try to be the ambassador of Tupaya, because Tupaya, it's such an incredible story, and it belongs to our sport. Huh? And if you when you do surfing, what's mean surfing? It's mean you are the outside at the lineup, and what you look at the waves who comes to you. Like the island is coming to them. It's the same idea, the same concept. Huh? So you know you don't go towards the waves. It's the waves go to you. So that's it. So the second story, it's totally different. It's me. I belongs to the 70s generation of surfers, and at that time I was. When I was 18, I finished school, and I told to my father that I won't go to university. I would travel, and I would go to Australia because there is surfing and that. And at that time, I had a brother who was living in Tahiti, and in fact, my father offered me a ticket to visit him, and I said to my father, "Oh, yeah, I won't go back with the flight. I try to find a boat, to be a crew on a boat and sail towards Australia." And finally, after 2 months staying over there were a guy coming and say, "Hey, you want to be a crew on a boat?" Yeah, I say yes, but I am going to San Diego, to California. So it was not my trip, but I decided, and from that time I did, not telling you the story, but I did a 2-year trip, hitchhiking and sailing all over the world without any board, and just following where the destination of the day with the hitchhiking. And coming back from that trip, it was in 1977, in May 1977. I was back. I worked a little bit during the summer with the family, and I wanted to travel more in Europe. And I decided to go to Madeira. And in fact, why I decided to go to Madeira is because I had a brother who went there in 1972 in August. and he went there with backpacking and with a friend, and they were the first to surf Pôle d'Omar. Huh? And if you see the coast of Madeira, you have two main spots on the south coast, which is Pôle d'Omar, which breaks with small swell, and Jardim d'Omar, this famous right-hand break. And so me, of course, I was thinking about Pôle d'Omar. Huh? So I landed I took the train up to Lisbon, and after I arrived, I was alone without any camera, and I arrived in Funchal, and so, you know, in 1977, there were not a lot of tourism, and so at that time, I took a bus, and I asked the bus to go to Pôle d'Omar. But in fact, the bus arrived at night at Jardim d'Omar. And so what happened? And there were no hotel, nothing. And there were kind of a nice guy who say, okay, oh, what is that there is on the roof? And they were really wondering. My board was in a bag, and was really wondering, what is that? How do you use it? And so these kids brought me to his grandmother, and she offered me an hut where I could sleep and stay. But there were no restaurants, so, you know, taking grapes or banana or biscuit to feed. And in fact, at low tide, you could walk along the cliff. And so the next day, it was flat, no swell, but some small waves. And I surfed Pôle d'Omar, but I didn't have any idea of the wave. But all the people of Jardim d'Omar say, yeah, we have a big wave here, it breaks. So I say, well, yeah, what's happened? And some of the people were very afraid of me because, no, you won't go there, you are going to kill yourself. And the other, yeah, let's go, because we want to see what you do with your board. And so it was kind of a strange, you know, I was in the middle. And so I stayed a few days with the family. I became kind of a, you know, part of the village. And after it was totally flat, so I decided to leave my board and hitchhike around the island. And when I came back, the swell came in. And so I surfed, maybe so for those who know, I used to surf the spot in between, which is Punta Pequeña. And but at that time, it was, you know, they were not looking at that waves. And also, you know, Madeira, it's kind of a tricky way to go out because of the rocks, and the swell was going up, and at that time we didn't duck dive. I had a 7.4 and alone in the water, so it was the end of the day. So I finally surfed, took 2-3 waves at Punta Pequeña and came back to the village. And this was a Saturday night, and it was the feast of the village, because the feast of the school. So I was invited at the feast, and everybody was saying, yeah, now there is waves, so you are going to show us what's going on. And I saw finally the wave of Jardim d'Omar, but it was breaking at more than 12 foot, so it's impossible for me. And so, but the next day, it was the Sunday, and the people were, you know, looking at me, and I was, the swell, it was around maybe 8 foot, and so I crossed all the village, all the citizens were behind me, and some saying, you are going to kill yourself. Oh, yeah, you are going to show what's going on. And so I tried to go to the lineup, but at that time we didn't duck dive. So in fact, I got finally sucked back to the shore, and I did not surf. And so part of the village were very happy because I was still alive, and the other part was very the big deception because they could not see what do I do with my board. And finally, it was the next day. It was the Monday morning, and the swell was just 1.5 meters, so really clean, glassy, perfect. And so I wake up very early in the morning, and I went to the lineup, and so I think everybody was going to their work, kids to school and everything. And when I start and I paddle on my first wave, all the village was on the beach, and they were screaming and saying, yeah! So this was an incredible story for me. Of course, I surfed a few moments later, during all the day, and the next day it was flat, so I left, because also at that time we didn't have any idea of forecast and everything, and I had to come back. And in fact, I came back I keep it secret. In fact, I did not, even when I create surf session, I keep it secret. And I can tell you the story. We did not publish anything on Madeira. And the first thing, what happened is that they were a good photographer. His name is Ted Grambeau. He was working for all the magazine. And I told him that story. And he'd say, oh, this is a good story. And once, and I told him, okay, I know that you are a nice guy. If once, maybe I can explain you. And I was at the desk of Surf Station, and I received a fax from Ted Grambeau saying, hey, Gibus, we are at Funchal. Where are the waves? So I told him, yeah, okay, you go that way. And it was the start of they published in Surfer magazine the Jardim on also Madeira, and it was the start. And me, I came back in I think it was beginning of 2000. There were an American guy whose name is William Henry, and he used to come to Madeira. And at that time, with the European funds, Madeira has changed because they were building roads, tunnels, and also they were building that that road along the borderline of Jardim, and creating a backwash and for nothing. And so we create a kind of we mobilized the population, which was divided in two parts. Those who were thinking this is nice because it will bring some tourists. The others say, yeah, you're killing the waves. And so we did some demonstration with locals, and we walk in Funchal. So it was kind of a something. And it was the start of this organization you may know, which is Save the Waves of William Henry, and he started it's environmental organization with that story of Madeira. Voilà. That's it. Thank you.